Okay, I think we are about to get started. Again, we are just going to be talking about our Major League Baseball opening, how COVID-19 is taking a huge role in that, kind of the season at large, and then what can fans experience. Again, if you do have questions, please go ahead and use that Q&A function. We will get to the questions tail end of the conversation. And yeah, I think we're ready to go. So I would love to introduce to you Bay Area News Group Executive Sports Editor, Bud Gracie. So please, Bud, take it away and have a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you all for coming to visit with us today. We're happy you're here. My name is Bud Gracie. I'm the Executive Sports Editor for the Bay Area News Group. I've been a professional sports writer for almost 40 years now, and I know what you're thinking. I must have gotten a very early start because I look so young. Right. Saw a lot of things. I've never seen a baseball season like this. None of us have. We have with us today five baseball writers. Kerry Crowley, who covers the Giants for the Bay Area News Group. Bill Plunkett, who covers the Dodgers for the Southern California News Group. Jeff Fletcher, who covers the Angels for the Southern California News Group. JP Hornstra, who covers both teams for the Southern California News Group, both teams being the Dodgers and the Angels. And Shana Rubin from the Bay Area News Group, who covers the A's. I'd like to go around the horn real quick here and give each of you a minute to tell us a little bit more about yourself. And the Bay Area News Group people are well rehearsed. So I will start with Kerry Crowley just to give you other guys a chance to gather your thoughts and sum up your entire career in 30 seconds or 60 seconds. Kerry, tell us a little about you.
Thanks, Bud. I appreciate it. I started with the Bay Area News Group in January 2018, so this marks my third season covering the San Francisco Giants. I'm a fifth-generation San Franciscan, grew up in the southwestern corner of San Francisco out by Harding Park, which is hosting a big golf tournament coming up soon. I now live in the Sunset District, so my commute to Oracle Park's about 15, 20 minutes. Coming home at night, 30 to 45 minutes getting there during rush hour traffic. And I am also featured on KMBR, the Giants flagship radio station, as a regular guest, talking about the Giants on air. And with the Bay Area News Group, I've had the privilege of helping out with 49ers coverage, covering the Super Bowl, covering the Golden State Warriors as well. So while baseball is my primary focus, I do like to be immersed in the entire Bay Area sports scene. So thanks for the opportunity, Bud.
Thank you, Kerry. Shana, why don't you take it? Why don't you bat in the two hole today?
Got it. I'll be Chapman for today. I'm Shana Rubin. I grew up in San Francisco as well. I went to high school in the Haight, and I went to San Francisco State University. Graduated in 2014, got my master's in 2017 in broadcasting. I came to Bay Area News Group last year in the middle of the season when the A's were starting to get hot. Covered the wild card loss, and now was ready for my first full season on the beat, and then a pandemic hit. So hopefully I can bring you what's going on with the A's, even though it's a little bit different this year. It was definitely surreal watching a game live in an empty stadium. So looking forward to covering this strange season.
Yes, we had a game last night. Giants A's played in Oakland, first game for either of them in 4 months, I believe. They have another one tonight in San Francisco. And actually, to tell you how odd of a season it is, Shana will not attend tonight. She will cover the game from TV, which is what Kerry did last night rather than going to Oakland. And it's not because we can't afford the gas money to send them across the bridge. it's because of the bridge toll. No, it's because we will be doing a lot of that this year. The risks of travel, the amount of access that teams are going to be able to give us. Basically, everything is Zoom interviews. It really calls into question whether we use our travel budget to do that. So they Carrie got a little experience covering the game from TV last night. Shana will get that tonight. All very exciting. So let me go to Bill Plunkett, whose byline I have seen for many years. He also got a very early start on his career. Bill, over to you.
Well, I was born in a log cabin out in the suburbs outside Detroit. Went to Michigan State, go green. The diploma's on the wall there behind me. And I've been working in newspapers for, 37 years, I think, just behind you, bud. Worked in Gallup, New Mexico. Everybody cheer if you knew where that is. Casper, Wyoming, another hot spot. Victorville, you've all passed through on the way to Vegas. Palm Springs, you've all golfed there. And Orange County since 1999. Covered just about every sport you can name over the years. Been doing baseball exclusively since '03. Been on the Dodgers and Angels beat alternately. Been on the Dodgers for most of that time, including the last 7 or 8 years.
All right. Let's go over to Jeff Fletcher, who we go back quite a long way. I don't know how far that is, but it's far. Jeff also looks very good for his age. Jeff, catch us up on your exploits.
Well, thanks for having me, bud. I'm glad that you must be happy that Plunkett and I have raised the average age here to catch up to you a little bit, since other than just Carrie and Shana. But I grew up in Ohio, went to Ohio University, go Bobcats, and pretty much straight out of graduation, I moved to California and have split the subsequent years pretty much evenly between Northern California and Southern California. I covered the Giants and A's for the Santa Rosa Press-Democrat for about 12 years. And then I've covered the Angels down here for the Orange County Register for about 8 years. So I've seen pretty much both sides of the fence, and everybody in Northern California is much more interested in how I thought it was compared to Southern California than vice versa. That was very interesting.
We might have to touch on that. I've always been very interested in that. In fact, you know what? Let's not go any further. My view of that. Oh, JP's back too. Good. Fletch, just fill me in from that perspective. My sense of it has always been that Northern California, specifically the Bay Area, is much more exercised about Southern California and the Dodgers, and we hate LA, than the feelings that run south to north. Is that accurate?
When I moved to Northern California from Southern California, a lot of people were very interested to find out that I liked it better up there. But then when I moved back, nobody cared what I thought about Northern California. So,
yeah, that's kind of it. Well put. JP, welcome back. And
Thanks.
Welcome in. I was just having everybody tell us a little bit about themselves. Let the folks with us today know who you are. And boy, I sure like where you're sitting right now.
Thanks. Well, but I was trying to sit on my front patio, but it's like 80 degrees out there. So my iPhone actually overheated. That's why I dropped out. So now I'm in the shade. I actually grew up in Cupertino, reading the Wake of the Week every Saturday. And I got my first job out of college covering sports for the Vallejo Times-Herald, Bang property up there in the suburbs of the Northeast Bay. Came down to Southern California in 2006, and since 2012, I have been covering the Dodgers in some way, shape, or form. Spent a few years covering the Dodgers and the Angels, and then just the Dodgers, and then the Dodgers and the Angels again. But headline there, a lot of baseball for the last 8 years, all down here. lot of family up in Northern California still, and love the Sunset District. Good choice, Carrie. So that's my story.
I'm wondering
and, I'm sticking to it.
If you cover both teams this year, is there any way for you to get a 120 game season rather than 60?
You know,
like
it depends. It depends on how I cover it. I'd have to be really creative about flipping channels.
Right. You know, that's so many oddities. So many oddities are going to come of this season, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And we'll start with what you guys have been doing these last couple of weeks. You know, everything started normally back in spring training. You guys did those 6 weeks. You're getting ready to break camp when all of a sudden the pandemic breaks open. We bring you home, and here we have 4 months later. We're restarting. I want to go to Fletch first and just tell me an oddity you've seen. I think of the Zoom interviews. You guys are having interviews with people that you could throw a baseball to, but you're having to do it by Zoom. What other kinds of weird things? Give me one weird thing, Fletch, that you've been dealing with the last 2 weeks of these camps.
Well, I think simply seeing a guy on a baseball field wearing a mask is very strange. A surgical mask, you know, they're out there taking ground balls wearing a mask, and it's just like you just never thought that you would see that. You could just look at that picture and not know any other information, and you would have 2020 pretty much summed up.
Carrie?
For me, it's the Zoom calls, and you're accustomed to interviewing players at their lockers. You're accustomed to spending time in the clubhouse and overhearing conversation, but I'm trying to have Zoom calls with Giants players and coaches and managers to do these interviews in a house where I live with 4 roommates and a dog. And so I found the best way to make sure that everyone knows it's not time to interrupt is to just put the Zoom call on the television. And so my roommates who work at different places around San Francisco can see Jeff Samardzija or Tony Watson on the TV and understand that I'm at work here.
Is it true the dog is the best behaved being in that house?
No, certainly not. We have a terror of a dog. So, yeah, wasn't my decision. I love pups, but.
Good. How about you, Shayna? What's weirded you out over there?
Well, I thought the Zoom calls were all weird, and just seeing all the photos of all the players in a mask, wearing a mask was odd. But then once I got to the Coliseum yesterday and tried to cover an actual baseball game, I think that topped all the oddities, just because I was staring at a sea of cardboard cutouts. I was listening to a crowd noise reel go off. I was trying to figure out where they were getting those sounds. I think I identified the stopping point where they repeated the crowd noise. It's hard not to get distracted by how strange it felt and how I could hear. I mean, there's auxiliary dugouts just to keep everyone distanced, and the A's auxiliary dugout was a couple rows in front of me, so I could hear everything they were saying. So it was kind of not everything. I can hear what they're yelling. I can hear when they're, getting excited or angry. But that was definitely the strangest experience. It's because you don't realize how much a crowd plays into the experience of a baseball game until it's not there. Or maybe you do realize it, but it was a once in a lifetime, and not once. It's gonna happen more times, but that was a once in a lifetime opportunity and experience.
I want the full expose on my desk in 2 hours on what you heard.
That was what I was thinking. Actually, I was gonna slack you.
Well, that would be interesting. Bill, how about you? What's it been like at the Dodgers camp?
Very strange, just like they said, starting with having your temperature taken when you drive up. I don't know if anybody else can beat this. I had an 89.6 the other day. I do like the air conditioning in the car, and it's a bit of a long drive, so I don't know how much good it does if they're registering me as hypothermic. So yeah, and the crowd noise pumped in is just really odd. If you've been at a game at Dodger Stadium in the last decade, you know how loud the music is, how loud all the bells and whistles that they add are. Every bit of that is still there, just as annoying, even without fans in the stands. So it's, it's an odd experience.
I can see them taking your temperature and saying, "Yeah, this guy doesn't have COVID, but he's got something.
He's hypothermic.
He's 89.6." JP, how's it been? I assume you've been bouncing between those two camps or not?
A little bit of bouncing. Yeah, having been to both, I mean, at least at Dodger Stadium, you're allowed to sit in roughly the same area where you would be sitting during a normal regular season. Not anymore.
JP.
Not anymore, as Plunk wags his finger. I got to sit in my normal seat in the press box last week. Angel Stadium, as some of you may know, we were confined to right field this season. And you really can't see anything in right field when there's no television monitor above you to give you that center field camera angle. The occasional replay to zoom in on a pitch crossing home plate. During inter-squad, we didn't get any television feed. So that was really hard. But I think the hardest thing, as far as us being able to do our jobs, is that we're entirely at the mercy of these Zoom calls. Yeah, exactly. You need the binocs. Fletcher even takes pictures using his binocs. You're going to have to explain how that works. Anyway, we're at the mercy of teams hooking up these Zoom calls unless you happen to have the number of a player or a coach who you can text. And even that, I'm not quite sure how that's going to work over a 60-game season, whether players are going to be responsive after a lousy game and after which they don't get on Zoom. I don't know if they're going to want to comment at all if I text them. So a lot of logistical challenges for just doing the job well, the way that I've come to define doing the job well. That's going to be tough. Thank God it's only 60 games that we have to put up with that.
Yeah, it's always fascinating to me, like what becomes secondhand for us in our jobs. A lot of people don't know. It's like anything else. You pull the curtain back, there's a whole another world there. And for us in this business, being able to walk up to a guy in the clubhouse or in the dugout before a game and say, "Hey, tomorrow's an off day and I want to do this story on you," or whatever it is, but I need to talk to you. Can we talk now? Can we talk later? Whatever. All that is out the window. You are going to get who the team gives you. And, all the thinking about, hey, this off day's coming up, this would be a great story. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know how cooperative the teams are going to be. How the players are going to be. Most of them don't really want to talk to us to begin with, so got a great out. They don't have to hide in the clubhouse or in the trainer's room this year. They can be wherever they've got to get out of there right away, right? Isn't that the deal? So let me ask you guys this. So we're going to have a season, 60-game season. Do you think we're going to have a season? Are we going to get all the way through, or is something going to happen to put it asunder? Kerry, what do you think?
I think one of the things that everyone overlooks in talking about MLB not having as rigid of a plan for restarting a season as the NBA and the NHL is that baseball players are very boring people who live very boring lives. They rarely leave their hotel rooms. They love playing video games. They get their most enjoyment out of life out of being at the ballpark. And so if they're in a safe space where they're getting tested every 48 hours and they're wearing a mask on planes and wearing a mask on chartered buses, I spoke with an epidemiologist from UCSF on Monday, and he said that he does believe that baseball can do this safely. And he thinks that, as long as players commit to wearing masks in public settings where everyone else is wearing masks, then he thinks that there is a level of competence that maybe we're undervaluing or underestimating, considering that baseball players are largely creatures of habit. And this isn't like the 1980s when they were showing up at sports bars outside of Wrigley Field. They're very well aware of the public spotlight that they're in.
We have any dissenters out there? Anybody who thinks we aren't going to Bill.
No, I want a dissent on the baseball being players being boring guys who stay in the hotel all the time. Kerry has clearly never covered Yasiel Puig.
I have not. I wanted the opportunity this year.
No, Fletch and I talked about this before the camp started, and I pegged it at 75% that they finish postseason and everything. And I know that sounds optimistic, but it's actually cynical. And it is because the money to be made is in October, the postseason TV revenue. So I think they will forge on through a lot of stuff if it means getting to October and cashing that check.
Fletch, what percentage did you give it if Bill gave it 75?
Well, I actually have a different answer than I would have had before camp started because I think a couple things happened. Once, I think the numbers that MLB released that showed that fewer guys were testing positive once camp started than were tested positive before, I think that's a good sign. And I also think, I don't think they could play a 162-game season under these requirements of quarantines and staying in the hotel and everything like that. But 60 games is not very long, and I think everybody realizes that it's not only in their individual best interests to behave themselves, but it's in the whole rest of their team's best interest. And if one guy thinks, if I go out to this bar, it couldn't just mess me up, but it could mess up the whole team. And if you're feeling like, man, if I mess up, I could mess up Mike Trout, and I could have like a problem for Mike Trout and his baby he's about to have because I needed to go out and have a beer. No way, I'm staying in my hotel room. So I think that there's a lot of peer pressure involved, and I think the guys are going to behave themselves for 60 games. Like I said, 162 would be tough, but this is a pretty short time.
Let's talk a little about the oddities of the 60-game season. And one that fascinates me is the extra innings rule. So correct me if I have this wrong, but if we're tied after 9 innings, the 10th inning starts with a runner on second base, correct? It's really going to affect the game-winning RBI stat, which was always so meaningful anyway, right? But what feelings do you guys have, or what is if it's either on that rule or something else that is coming into play this year as a result of a 60-game season? Shayna, what's your feeling on that, on the extra inning business? I know your manager Bob Melvin is not a fan.
Yeah, Bob talked about it a little bit the other day, and he didn't really mince words about it. He just said, "No, I don't like it. I hope it doesn't continue. Not a fan. Moving on." But I talked to a couple players about it, and they kind of like the idea. I think that they're fans of not playing long games. So they seemed a little bit more. Some of the players that I've talked to seemed a little bit more open-minded about changing things up to make things move along, especially in this situation where each game feels a little bit stranger. They seemed open-minded to it, but Bob, no.
Have any of the other managers weighed in, guys, on this issue in any way worth remarking, or are they just kind of like accepting it?
Yeah, I think everybody is kind of accepting this year as just being so odd that they'll try anything. I don't think there's a whole lot of fans of the, put a guy on second. Having covered an 18-inning World Series game, I think the drama builds in those kind of things, and they won't be using the rule in the postseason, by the way. But I think the long games that I've covered, the drama builds in the extra innings, and it becomes, kind of wakes people up and keeps you interested for a while.
I actually love I love the 18-inning games, 17-inning games. I don't care so much for 12-inning games or 11-inning games. Those just kind of random extra innings thrown onto your life that you're not going to remember at all. So for the regular season, I have no problem with this. To me, it's just the same as a shootout in hockey. It's a kind of fun way to end the game.
I don't like either.
Yeah, okay. But they don't have it in the playoffs, so it's all right. It's a regular season game. Let's get it over with. Let's have a little fun. But when the games really matter the most, we're going to play for real. And I think that's an appropriate way to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think for the regular season, I would probably term it a necessary evil. If you talk to players about it, they would tell you that they're invincible and that they can do this marathon or the sprint of a schedule with fewer off days and play the odd 18-inning game in the middle of it. But I think you kind of need something to save players from themselves, to curtail the games that could go on past midnight, particularly when you've got a travel day. And with all the restrictions on travel and trying to keep players healthy, the fewer variables, the better. And this, I think, eliminates some of them. But I'm with Bill. I wouldn't have hated ties. Like, me personally, just do it for 60 games. I don't see how allowing ties for one regular season would have been that much more of a leap than half the stuff they're doing this year.
Wouldn't that have put you at risk, though, of like needing to play a tiebreaker? Because these guys are both, 30 and a half, and what would their record be? 30 and a half and 29 and a half.
Maybe that's why they didn't do it.
Going into game 61, the always, dramatic game 61 of the season. We're gonna open things up to questions from our guests here today. And I was going to wait, and I will, but someone just came in with one that I'd like to go to right now, and it's Cole from Anaheim, lifetime Halos fan, and he has an interesting point. I'm not going to give away any last names, so we'll just call him Cole. Cole says, from my observation, it seems that players feel more comfortable in the Zoom interviews. They appear to be less guarded, and their responses seem to offer more than the usual cliches. I'm curious to know if you all have observed something similar.
That is 100% false.
What? Bill is absolutely not?
No, players do not give you the same interview when they're in front of a camera, even if it's just a little, handheld iPhone camera. When you're talking to them in their world of the locker room, they're a lot more open. They're a lot more relaxed. I find everything in front of a camera, and in the Dodgers case, they're taking these guys into the press conference room where they're sitting all by themselves with nothing but a camera in front of them. They are not relaxed and open at all. I think some guys may go a little longer and talk a little longer because they don't feel the presence of 20 people around them. But you get much better interviews done when you can go up to a guy at a more convenient setting, more comfortable area.
Yeah. They're at their best when you're just talking to them casually.
Yeah.
When you put the recorder on, that makes it a little worse. When you put a camera in front of them, that makes it a little worse. When you put them in a press conference room, that makes it a little worse again. So you just keep adding these layers onto it. And it's really, sometimes I was thinking about like a certain player that I'd like to get to know a little better. And I was like, oh man, I'm not going to have a conversation with this guy at all. And if it's a guy who's like, this is his only year with the Angels, take Julio Teheran, who's a free agent. Like, I'm never going to have a conversation with Julio Teheran. So, it's very strange.
Anybody else want to jump in on that? Bay Area group, have you experienced or noticed any such thing? Guys,
One thing I'll say is there's been a handful of players, I'm talking like 2 or 3, it's not very many, that have appreciated the novelty of the Zoom, and they like when things open up and they see 10 different reporters who they're accustomed to seeing in front of their lockers. And these are usually the more media-friendly players. And so seeing everyone pop up and having the opportunity to say hi kind of individually when there's this gallery view has been fun for guys like Jeff Samardzija and Tony Watts and some of the more outspoken players on the team. But I would agree with Bill and Jeff in that most players are less likely to give you something that's thoughtful, something that's really informative, and something that's different from the kind of cliche answer that you tend to give when there are more people around, because you understand that more people are listening and watching, and what you're saying is going to be disseminated more widely.
I'd say that novelty will probably wear off by game 20.
Oh, it already has. It's just the first time. It's just the first time where they say, "Oh, this is how it's done." But it is kind of funny, and a little insight into what life is like in 2020.
Same thing with me. Same thing with the A's. I mean, one exception was Matt Chapman. He usually hides from us because he doesn't want to talk, even though he's pretty outspoken. When we get him cornered, for some reason we talked to him when he was in his apartment, and he just went on for like 30 minutes, and he had a lot to say, I think. So he talks a lot when he has a point he wants to get across. But so that was an advantage I felt that we had. But obviously, I would much prefer to have one-on-ones with someone that I feel like I need to talk to that day, and there's zero opportunity for that, which just eliminates any nuance in reporting for the most part.
I would add for the Dodger fans out there, if you watch Sportsnet LA, their station, and we all can now, everything changed on the Dodgers beat the day that Sportsnet LA was born. There are cameras, multiple camera crews around constantly. Either the Sportsnet LA, Alana Rizzo, and the pregame and postgame type stuff, or a second camera crew that they shoot backstage Dodgers, the behind-the-scenes show that they have on the network. So everything changed when they came along, because now there were always cameras in the clubhouse, and I think guys became a lot more guarded once they saw that those guys were going to be around constantly.
I'd like to add that I hope that when this season is over, that the fans and readers realize and appreciate how nice it was that you could if 4 different writers are covering the team, they might have 4 different stories and talk to 4 different people. Or if you write a story about one subject, you might have quotes from 6 different people about that. And really, that's not happening this year. It's like every day, it's like, okay, today we're all writing about player X because he's the guy that they served up to us, and he's the only person that we're talking to today. So I think that hopefully readers appreciate what they're missing when we come back to next year.
We're gonna have a Cy Young winner with like 8 wins, right? Do you think there's gonna be a 400 hitter? No. I mean, that's just, even in 60 games, that's just too hard to maintain. Cody Bellinger had as hot a start as anyone I can remember seeing last year. First 60 games, he was just red hot. And he won the MVP based on that. He was hitting 376 at the end of 60 games. So to get even hotter and hit 400, I have a hard time imagining somebody out there doing it.
Clarify that a little bit. I'm assuming that
you were here with us.
I'm assuming that the batting title will be 3.1 plate appearances per team game, like usual. So you have to hold it up over 186. If I'm doing the quick math, plate appearances. That's tough. It's not impossible. I would hope. My only hope is this: that if somebody does do it, that it's like a good player, that it's not like somebody we've never heard of, or somebody who could have the perception of having lucked into it. I guess if I'm rooting for anything this season, it's legitimacy, that the best teams, that there are good teams in the World Series, that if somebody does hit, 20 home runs, goes off and does something stupid like a 20 home run season in such a short campaign, or a 400 season, that it's a good player. Otherwise, the end of season award voting could get really interesting.
I don't want to be referencing for years, that John Doe was the first 400 hitter since Ted Williams, right? And those of us who were around way back, and even you others, you have to reference like 81. Something happened in 1981, the strike shortened season, right? That skewed the stats. Of course, we did go through a period where all the stats got screwed, or skewed, I should say, with the PED era. Let's talk about the authenticity of the season and the championship. Really, one of the things about baseball has always been the long season. The cream will rise to the top. You have very, very few flukes. When they used to have like a 3-game mini series in the playoffs, they saw what happened with that. there used to be a 5-game LCS, which they, ended up pushing to 7. I think that was more financially driven, but also you had the chance of a better team not advancing. How authentic of a champion will we have in a 60-game season? And JP, as long as I'm looking at you right now, let's start with you.
Again, I really hope that the regular season field looks normal. I think once you get to the playoffs, it will be a degree of randomness that we're all accustomed to, right? But I think everybody here had to make some preseason predictions. I went really weird with mine. I had a bunch of young teams who are probably a year or two away in my playoff field, just because I think that those younger teams, I'm really worried that we're going to see star players who get lost for extended chunks of time because they contract COVID-19 and it might take them time to bounce back. And I think it could get weird if that happens and we see some teams who haven't made the playoffs in years, who might be just barely out of the downslope of the rebuilding phase into the playoff field. Then once you get there, anything could happen. However, I will say that if you see, a couple super teams, if you see the Astros and the Yankees in the playoff field, it wouldn't matter to me if they're joined by the White Sox and the Blue Jays, for example. I think that over a 7-game series, the better team will win out. Same in the National League. Those are teams that have been there before. Those are teams that have been accustomed to the sort of randomness that happens in the playoffs. And I'm not necessarily sure that if a team that is still in the sort of rebuilding portion will have a general manager who's willing to commit to this year to acquire the type of player who can put them over the top in a 7-game series. I think we'll get there eventually, but I think the playoff field itself could be weird.
Let's go to the prediction round. Terry Crowley, who's in the World Series? And who wins this?
That's very tough to say because it's all contingent on health, but the Yankees are so deep that they're my choice to win the World Series. I think that if you're picking a team from the National League, I'd probably go with the Dodgers or the Braves, just based on their depth and the amount of young talent that they have that would seemingly be able to bounce back quicker in a 60-game and 66-day stretch. But the Yankees are my choice because I think that no one can out-hit them.
And as long as I have you here, over/under on Giants wins.
Ooh, over/under on Giants wins. Well, I just got the Vegas odds sent to my email, bud, and it was 26.5. So
Really?
if that's the number you're going with, it's the third lowest total in the National League. Only the Pirates and Marlins from the particular sports book that emailed me had 25.5. So
What is that? What is that particular sports book? Because I would get in.
I am not quite sure. Pretty much every sports book found a way to get into my email, bud. So I think that might say more about your leadership than it does about the accessibility of my email.
I saw something the other day. It must have been something you written. Maybe it was the projected lineup, and I was just, oh my God, this is a horrible team.
Well, they're not going to have Buster Posey, Evan Longoria, or Brandon Belt for opening day, and their 3-4-5 hitters could be a combination of minor league free agents and waiver wire acquisitions. So you compare that with the Dodgers 3-4-5 hitters, or the Dodgers 7-8-9 hitters, is probably a better comparison. And the Dodgers are probably still fielding a more competitive club at the back end of their lineup. So it is going to be an uphill battle for this team.
I'm thinking of cutting this thing short and getting online for that 26.5.
It'll still be there at 11:30.
Okay, I'll stay there. Bill, your World Series champions.
I would say that the 30 guys the Dodgers have at their alternate training site would probably make a better roster than the Giants have.
You're not wrong.
I went Dodgers over Yankees. I think the Dodgers finally have figured it out. I mean, they really are loaded right now. And then you give them the DH so that they can put another bat in a lineup that already, added Mookie Betts after leading the National League in runs and home runs last year. I just think it's ironic that, let's be honest, 2020 is going to have an asterisk next to it in all of our lives, let alone the baseball record books. So I just think it would be kind of ironic that the Dodgers could finally win another title and have it be viewed as less legitimate than the title the Astros won in 2017 by banging on trash cans. What do you think?
Well, to take out Bill's point, it would be kind of convenient because the Dodgers won in '81, which was also not a real season. So I picked the Dodgers to win over the Yankees, which is really super boring. I hated myself for picking it, but I don't think that your ranking of who are the best teams changes when it goes to 60 games. What changes is your certainty in that ranking. So I'll take Dodgers over Yankees.
Shayna?
I was gonna say Dodgers, Yankees too, but now that just feels like I'm copying everybody. I think it's Dodgers over Yankees. I'm excited to watch some other up and coming teams, even if it's just in 60 games. I'm excited to watch the White Sox and the Reds, and I feel like there's going to be a little bit of a shakeup in the postseason if that happens. But I think that it'll be a ratings dream with a Yankees-Dodgers series. Maybe the A's. Never know.
Which would not be a ranking stream, but
no,
would be interesting.
Would be interesting.
JP, I think you got very close to telling us your pick, and you may even have. I remember. I think I remember 4 teams at one point. What did you have?
Yeah, I think I picked the Dodgers to beat the Yankees. Also, I went boring. But I mean, look, I can see some weird scenarios happening this year. My hope, though, is that we do see 2 legitimate teams standing at the end of the season, because I think that, first of all, I don't think there will actually be an actual asterisk in the record books next to anything that happens this season. I think there will be stories that we tell people from here on out about what the heck went on. But I think it will look less asterisk worthy if you do have a sort of Dodgers-Yankees World Series. Again, if I'm rooting for anything, I'm rooting for something that looks legitimate at the end of the season.
I see some kid, years from now going, hey, Grandpa, how did the Dodgers win the World Series with 42 wins that one year? Well, they were great. They went 42-18. I want to turn it over to the crowd here. We've gotten quite a few questions for you guys. Here's a quick one to start off with from Ron. What are they going to do with the 7th inning stretch? Anybody? They're going to do it. It was the same as always at the Dodgers exhibitions. Are those cardboard figures going to get up and stretch? They don't have a lot of mobility, so no, they don't.
I wasn't out at the Coliseum last night, but I heard they were playing the normal games on the scoreboard that they do for fans. Shayna, is that something that we'll be able to see? And were those games just intended for the relief pitchers all along?
Yeah, they had the dot game where the dots race around the maze. So I guess that was for the players all along. There was also a Zoom meeting, I think, during the 7th inning stretch, if I recall. So I was trying to remember, what was I doing during the 7th inning? I think they had Sean Manaea on Zoom. So, and that was the worst thing, is we were hearing all of the piped in noise during the Zoom, and I had headphones, but it still didn't make a difference. So that's one adjustment. I mean, it's not going to be a thing in the regular season, but I did not enjoy doing a Zoom during the game.
Did you you mentioned the crowd noise that they piped in? Is that at one point it sounded like it might have been a continuous loop, because you said it came back, you could kind of tell when it came back around, but is it is there out of context, like all of a sudden this great roar goes up when nothing's going on, or do they have it coordinated to events?
It was slightly coordinated. There were some oddities there when the Giants were up. They did the I'm blanking on what it's called, where it's a charge or whatever, that there's a name for it. I don't know, but it seemed like, okay, that seems off. There were random airplane noises. I don't know why we would want that. There were BART noises, and I couldn't tell if it was the train passing by. I would look to see, or if they had recorded the BART, and I don't know why we would want that either. The drums were there.
Really?
The sound, I don't know if they were just trying to experiment with how quiet or loud they wanted it, but the sound started off way too low where I could hear the pitcher kicking the dirt, and it was just the most awkward. It was very awkward, and they finally they pumped it up a little too high, and then they kind of had it in the middle for a few innings, and then for a few situations they would just amp it up, and it just seemed a little bit uncoordinated timing wise, but I'm sure they'll get into mid-season form with the sounds soon. They were just experimenting.
You have, let's make some noise and everybody clap your hands. I mean, they're not doing.
There was no clapping of hands. No, there was. I only saw one game. They had a PA announcer. They had the executive producer of in-game operations doing it, which was pretty. The cadence was the same, but it was just for the players, I guess, it was a strange scene.
Are we singing Kate Smith this year? What do you guys know? Continuing on the seventh inning stretch theme. You guys know anything about? Are we singing that on Sundays?
I imagine they can put all that stuff in there if they want. It's my understanding that every team was kind of pointed to a sound effects company that's doing this for them. Mm-hmm. And at least at Dodger Stadium, the first or the last one or two intra-squad games, there were a handful of people, I assume, from that company kind of walking around and talking and on microphones, talking to the guys in the press box and so on. They did, like Shayna was saying, they did personalize it a little bit down here. There was a "Let's Go Dodgers" chant that broke out among the cardboard cutouts.
I got to tell you, the Angels, they started off using the sound, and then like about 5 days into it, I'm just used to it. And then at one point during one of the intra-squad games, they had some kind of technical glitch, and it just went off, and all of a sudden it was silence, and that sounded really weird all of a sudden, because then you hear the players like just mumbling out there to themselves, and I think that's really what they're not trying to do necessarily is create a mood or ambiance. I think they're trying to prevent the guys on the field from overhearing each other, because I'm sure a lot of the guys say stuff that they don't want the other team to hear, and they need to take care of that. So I think that's the real reason for it. And when I watched the game on TV last night, the Angels were in San Diego, and it sounded totally normal on TV, so I have no issue with it.
We know they played the anthem because a couple of the Giants players took a knee last night, and I don't really want to go there, but it was a historic night in another way. Carrie Alyssa Knockin became the first, officially the first woman coach in MLB history, correct?
She did. So during spring training, she maintained her role as an assistant coach where she would be in the dugout during games. But last night we saw her on the field for the first time. She's been working, coaching outfielders and base running, and really honing in on base runners in the past few weeks during these summer workouts. So she's kind of the backup first base coach to Antoine Richardson, who was hired this offseason as well. And the thought behind having Alyssa work at first base is if Antoine has to miss a few games, or if Antoine, comes down with the coronavirus, the Giants have someone who can fill in. And so getting Alyssa that work was part of the preparation for the regular season. So she's not one of the 7 uniformed coaches who will be in the dugout during games this season, but she did, make history last night being in an on-field capacity, and she'll make history on Thursday at Dodger Stadium for opening night when she toes the line during introductions, and she's announced as the first woman coach in Major League Baseball history.
Yes, indeed. We have another one here. I believe it's from Donna. It's for Fletch, and she's wondering about Steve Trout. I'm showing my age there. Mike Trout and his status for this season.
Well, he had expressed some reservations about playing at the beginning of the season. As people know, his wife is due to deliver their first child in the beginning of August. And I think he was really unsure of how things were going to go, and he was not, 100% sure he was going to play. He's still there. He's still been fully participating. And from what Joe Madden told us yesterday, he seems to, his fears seem to have been eased. I think as they've gotten into this and people have followed the protocols and no more people have gotten sick, I think he's probably more comfortable. I think if there are, 2 or 3 guys suddenly show up positive on the Angels, or there's other teams that start to have 2 or 3 guys showing up positive, I think that could change his calculation. But as of right now, I believe he's ready to go.
Very good. Very good. Let's see who else we have here. Barry asks, what are the Giant and Dodgers managers saying about the DH? Kerry, do you want to start with Kapler, who was a DH, was he not?
At times during his career, yes. And I think that Bill's going to give a much more informative answer for Dave Roberts, because Dave Roberts is probably much more excited about the DH than Gabe Kapler can be right now. The Giants do not plan to have a full-time DH. They plan to rotate different players in and out on a daily basis, and it will largely be based on the hand of the pitcher they're facing. So on opening day, when they face Clayton Kershaw in Los Angeles, they will have a right-handed hitter as the DH. It could be a veteran like Hunter Pence. It could be a slugger like Darren Ruff, a minor league free agent. But when they face left-handed pitchers, when they face right-handed pitchers, you'll see left-handed hitters take down that role. So you could see Pablo Sandoval in that role. You could see Brandon Belt get a few days off at first base this season and fill in as the DH. But the Giants' plans for the DH do not include players who will typically slot into the 3-4 slots in the order. It will likely include players who are the 9th or 10th best options that day, or players who they need to get off their feet for a day and give them a rest so that someone younger can get into the lineup. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bill, who's got a much more exciting DH situation on his hands.
Well, hang on 1 second, because I think Kapler could be very excited about it, because I think Kapler could be their DH.
I mean,
probably better than most of them.
If you asked me what Giants player was in the best shape, I would say it's not a player, it's Gabe Kapler.
Yes. Well, and he would tell you that, wouldn't he?
Yes, indeed.
He's quite proud of his physique, right? I can't blame him. Bill, what is this exciting answer you have? Much ballyhooed.
Dave Roberts is looking forward to it because it gets him, allows him to put another good player in the lineup every day. Instead of having 9, they're going to have 10. So it's not going to be one person. The way Dave likes to call it, he calls them high-class problems. Getting at-bats for all the good players they have is a high-class problem. So DH helps that. It'll be different guys. I think you'll see Justin Turner in there a lot. He's 35. His defense last year kind of tapered off. He's had leg issues throughout his career. So I think DHing will be a good way to keep him healthy and productive. I think you'll see Kike Hernandez or Chris Taylor play more. And as a result, guys like Jock Peterson or Max Muncy, who knows, any of them could end up as a DH for a day.
Jacob asks, should players be wearing masks while playing? He watched the Angels-Padres game last night, and the players did not wear masks. Is there any worry about social distancing when runners are on base, hitters and catchers near each other, et cetera, et cetera? Let's go just to the top there. Should players be wearing masks while playing? Who wants it?
I noticed the other day I was watching part of the Indians-Pirates game, and the Indians' first baseman did not have a mask on, but then a runner got to first, and he put a mask on. Well, there was a runner there that he was holding on. So I think that's really the only situation on the field where the guys are close enough together for an extended time that it might be an issue. I think everybody else is pretty much spread out, so I don't think it should be too big of an issue.
Yeah, I think it's an individual question whether each individual player feels that they need to do it. I do not understand why the umpires have not been mandated to all wear masks. We've seen most of the most of the home plate umpires have worn it underneath their, normal mask. But there's no reason that the first base umpire can't be wearing a mask the whole time he's out there. He's interacting with players. He may not be right on top of guys, but he's also not running the bases or doing anything strenuous except in short bursts. So I think all the umpires should be mandated to wear it, and I'm surprised they haven't done that.
One of the rules this year is that you're not supposed to get within 6 feet of an umpire to argue a call. It doesn't happen as much in the replay era, but if you think about it, like, there aren't that many face-to-face interactions on a baseball field. It's usually guys facing home plate, facing in the same direction, and obviously most of them are 6 feet apart. But I feel like the one exception to that is the umpires. Even if you try your best not to get within 6 feet of them to argue a call, he's kind of like the one dude who regularly will have a face-to-face conversation with somebody on the field. I'm with you, Bill. I think they should be wearing them.
So, folks, we're coming up on 11 o'clock, which is when we were going to stop, but I want to do a couple more questions. So we'll run a little bit late, not too much. Here's a question from Christian, who's wondering, is 20 to 25 home runs a possibility for a few players this season? I would say either take Christian's question as it is, or tell me, who do you think, or what number wins the home run race this year?
I think every year somebody's got 20 homers by Memorial Day. So I think definitely somebody could hit 20 homers in the season. Now, that doesn't mean that if they had played the whole season that they would hit 80 or whatever that works out to. But for short bursts, I think definitely it could happen.
Brady Anderson?
A whole other topic.
Yeah. What's funny is that Brady Anderson came through town early that season, and he had like 50. I mean, he had like 20, and it was May, and he had never hit many before. And I don't know about others who were covering the game then, but I think we were all kind of in the dark, and, history shows us to have been fools. But I went to do a story on this remarkable Brady Anderson, and I could not believe how uncooperative he was in the interview. Like, you would have thought I was asking him about the worst thing that ever happened in his life. And it turned out to, I don't know if it was the worst, but it turned out to be a bad thing. Made perfect sense a couple years later about why that Brady Anderson column was terrible, and a terrible interview. Anybody else on the home run issue?
I will say Bellinger hit 20 during his 60-game hot start last year. So I'm with Fletch. That's kind of the number to shoot for. Somebody will do it. I wouldn't be surprised if that baseball that we use in 2020 might be a little have a little citrus added to it, a little juice.
Yeah, that could really make it a special season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Bellinger would get his 20 while he's hitting the 400.
Exactly. There you go. And win another MVP then.
Excellent. We have a question here from Kevin. Oh, Kevin, I almost gave away your last name. You said I wasn't going to do that. So for Fletch, he's asking about any particular prospects making a major impact this season.
Well, the Angels have a outfielder named Joe Adell, who's, depending on who you ask, either the second, fourth, or fifth best prospect in all of baseball. And he's gotten a lot of playing time in their summer camp. I think he's definitely going to be in the big leagues at some point this year. I don't think he's going to be their opening day, but he will be their everyday right fielder from 2021 through eternity, perhaps. So he looks very good, but he still has a few more things to work on right now.
I'm going to wrap up with one last one here, and it's from Jose. And he says, or asks, what advice would you give to college students that are pursuing sports journalism? You want to do it in a word? Is it run?
Change your major.
Change majors? What is it? What'd you say, Bill?
Change your major. Go study accounting. The newspaper industry is not exactly a robust growth industry right now. But if you really are committed to it, hopefully you're committed to the writing and not the sports, because writing and reporting is what this job is all about. I've covered a lot of different sports I didn't care about. I'm not a Dodger fan. I'm a reporter. And I think if you get into this business because you think it's going to be cool to go to the games and talk to Mike Trout, you will be sadly misinformed. That's not what the job is about. Get into it because you want to be a good writer and reporter.
I've told young people for years, and my flippant response has been run or change your major. But what I've told them is, let me ask you some questions. Do you want to work nights, weekends, holidays for not great money and now no job security? If you can answer that with affirmative yeses down the line, then you might have the sickness. And if you have the sickness, you have to honor it, or you'll be more miserable not doing this. I'm curious for our younger panelists, who chose to get in this not too long ago. Guys like Bill and I, it was right. I mean, it was a great career.
No internet, bud. There was no internet.
Yes, no Craigslist. You had a whole classified ad section carrying you every day. This was a great career choice. Carrie, what were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking I would need to really diversify my skill sets and learn about audio, visual, and written reporting to have a chance in the industry. And I would need to learn how to differentiate my coverage from everyone else who is covering the exact same beat as me, because you see 7 to 10 people covering every team professionally. And even though the numbers are dwindling, you still have to find a way to serve a significant portion of the audience. So determine what you do best, diversify your skill set, and try and outwork everyone. The longer hours you work, the more stories you'll tell, the more opportunities you'll have to find an audience that's committed to you and committed to your work, so that when you do get laid off or have no job security, your followers will want to come with you.
It is. I mean, things have changed a great deal. When we view it in traditional terms of print journalism or newspaper career, I couldn't recommend this. But, seeing Carrie and Shayna, it's, and as I said, the silver lining to all this is you can get somewhere a lot sooner than you ever would have. Bill and I probably paid some serious dues. I know Fletch did as well. So all those things of taking your own photos and doing video and all this. Might be a good time for to recommend the Carrie Crowley School of Modern Journalism.
Yeah.
This enterprising young man did during our downtime. You want to say a little about it?
I'll just say this. It's called Your Future in Sports Writing. You can reach out to me via email or on social media, and I'd be happy to give you the full breakdown of what that course entails.
Jose, I'm speaking to you. You're the guy who asked the question. There you go. Shayna, you want to take us out?
Wow. Okay. I was going to say something that someone told me after I graduated, which was don't study journalism, study history. I don't know if that's good advice, but I think try to diversify what you're learning in school, and so that you can write on a broad number of topics, and study how to report, how to be informed, how to write thoroughly, and whatever you feel like the path is to do that. But study journalism too if you want to.
Excellent. Listen, I am going to throw it back over to Aaron. Thank our panelists for being here today. Thank our audience for being here today. And Aaron, back to you.
Hey guys, thank you so much. Thank you all to the journalists. Thank you to our Southern California news group properties. We wanted to, again, just let you guys know that if you have any questions, please go ahead and email us at theevents@bayareanewsgroup.com, or for our Southern California folks, go ahead and email events@scng.com. Our next episode for our sports series will be episode 2, covering the NBA. It'll be on July 30th. There's multiple ways to sign up and register. One of the ways going to mercurynews.com/events. Same thing for eastbaytimes.com/events, as well as marinij.com/events. And in the chat, I believe we have sent out our Southern California links, and you will be getting those links in our follow-up emails if you attended today. So again, please make sure to register individually for each of those webinars. For our NBA one on July 30th, and then we'll have our NFL episode on August 6th. So again, thank you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. There will be the recording that we'll be sending out tomorrow. And if you guys have any other questions, please go ahead and shoot us an email. For the questions that we did not get to today, I'll be circling those around with the journalists, and hopefully they'll have a chance to answer them, and we'll get them out to you. But other than that, have a wonderful Tuesday, guys.